Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Perspectives Live, where we give you different perspectives from different people throughout the healthcare industry affecting human capital issues, things that affect us as people within the industry. And I'm really excited about our guest today. We have Dr. Katie Boston Leary. She is a CNO, a researcher, a healthcare executive, change agent, a keynote international speaker. She's also president of an organization called Reach One Initiative. And our main topic today is BYBS, resilient to unflappable. So we're going to learn about becoming resilient and unflappable in these changing times, challenging times within healthcare. So we want to thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, I'm excited about this topic list we have here, and want to kind of get into that. But before we do that, we always like to get a chance to know our guests. So, if you can, tell us what inspired you to even get into healthcare in the first place, and then we can kind of take a little further into how you got to where you are now.
Sure. I'm a registered nurse. I've been a nurse for 26 years. I've been in leadership for about 16 of those 26. Interestingly, I don't have any relatives that were in healthcare per se. My dad was an accountant. My mom was a hairdresser. But I took a gap year off after high school, and I fell into nursing, or nursing fell on me. It's kind of like that Plymouth Rock kind of a statement where I followed a cousin of mine who applied for a job in healthcare, and they put an application in front of me, and I filled it out too since I was there, and they called me, and I was like sure, and that started my career in healthcare, and then I became a nurse when one of my colleagues at the nursing home where I was working told me about scholarships that were being offered in the county that I was living in, and I didn't have any desire, but he threatened me to go and check it out before I came to work the next day. So just so I wouldn't get embarrassed, I did. And I was running late for work, and I ended up in the shorter line, and that line was the line for a registered nurse program. And that's how I became a registered nurse.
Wow.
But so it's not the glory story of, taking care of a family member or anything. I just went to a shorter line because I was running late for work. But I'll tell you, the profession loved me, and I love it back. There's nothing better, and as much as I accidentally fell into the profession, I'm so proud to be a nurse. I really am.
Oh, I love that. I still love the story though, because you found home anyway, even though it was something you weren't necessarily aiming for at first. That's great. Oh, by the way, I know we talked about
Yeah.
this earlier. You got secondary recording going too. Just want to make sure you have that going as well.
Say it again.
Secondary recording on your iPad, you got that going too, right?
Oh no, I'll do that now.
Okay. So one of the things I love about what you said, you took a gap year. We hear that from time to time, and I'm just curious about what advice would you give someone that was at that same age? Would you give them the advice to do that? Should they get right into what they think they want to do? Do you encourage a gap year, and how did that work for you?
Well, I don't know that I would encourage it because even though you probably should do that if you're not sure what you want to do, and I felt burnt out after high school. It's not just the academics, but the environment, the mean girls and everything else they have to deal with. So I just needed a break from that because it was just, at the time, it felt traumatic, if you will. So I felt that I needed that year to figure out what I wanted to do because I didn't have time to think about that. I felt that I was going to be an accountant, but towards the end, I wasn't sure that I wanted to do that. So that's why I took that year. So it depends on, because I know there are parents that will pressure their kids to go right in. But the best advice that I've received from someone is you never stop learning, even if it's a little bit, right? Even if you take one class a semester, you just don't stop, because once you stop, it's hard to get back in. So there are general classes you can take if you're not sure. But thankfully, I ended up in the right place, and I'm blessed for that.
That's good. So not everybody becomes leaders. You became a leader. You've spent a majority of your career as a leader. What were some things that led you to the path of becoming a leader? And then once you became a leader, some people feel like this is not for me, but apparently you did feel it was for you. So let's talk about what kind of led you to the path of becoming a leader, and then how did you know that this was the right place for you? Like, what about you that, okay, this is I'm in the right place. This is the right path.
So it's interesting because I never saw myself in that role. I was the anti-man establishment kind of gal, and I always wanted to take my own path with things. But it's that typical thing where people see something in you well before you see it in yourself. And I was finishing my bachelor's degree, and the chief nurse at the time, I was working as a nurse in the operating room, and she said, I'd like to talk to you. And she then said, I'd like to know what you plan to do with yourself after you finish. Like, what would you like to do? And just to pacify her, I just said, I want to do what, and it was me putting my thumb or my finger in the eye kind of response. I said, I want to do what you're doing right now. And I ran into her years ago, and she told me that she was so taken by that. But that was for me, that was just a stick it to her kind of answer that I was getting. But she placed me in the coordinator type of role, and I saw that the initial thing is that the initial shock that you get when you're in a leadership role is that you're shocked that people are listening to you. Like, what? You want to hear what I have to say, and you're going to do what I asked you to do? Like, what? And that becomes a bit intoxicating. And I must say, my first couple of stints as a leader, I failed. I didn't do well. I was more task oriented. I didn't know to build relationships. I lost my team because they felt that I was all task, and I didn't value them. And then I was working alongside a manager who had the other side of it, where she was all relationship and no task. So, and I saw that they were listening to her. So I started following what she was doing, and I'll walk into a room and I'll say, hey, how are the kids? And as soon as they're done with their answer, my next response is, do this for me. And they saw right through that. So it took a while for me to get it, where it's a merging of the two. It's task and relationship. And when I figured that out, I became a better leader. I really did.
Yeah, that's very insightful that you were cognizant enough to realize that you had that issue and then correct it. Because, I mean, how many leaders do we see that may be on one side, but they may not be aware of it?
Yeah, well, I was working along someone that was doing that. And then the third element was I had a boss who really didn't know about our specialty, but she was our director. And I felt that because I was an expert, people would come to me. But I found that they would go to her, and she was not an expert. So the third element is she had a knack for always getting back to people. Even if she didn't have an answer, she always circled back to people. And I wasn't doing that well because I was all task. Once the task was done, I'm on to the next one. So combining those three elements, where, yes, you focus on task, you build relationships, and you also circle back to people when they have concerns or questions. Once I figured those three things out and blending those things together, I started to see that I could be successful in the role. But it really took me moving forward and taking a couple steps back and taking a lower position and working my way back up, and figuring it out along the way.
That's another thing. That goes to something that I think we should be talking about today. I know this is on your list, is how to be resilient, because you went from leadership, had to take a step back, and then worked your way back up.
Yeah.
Let's get into this BYBS. What is a BYBS? Explain what that is about, please.
So BYBS BIBS is what I coined in terms of how to bring your best self, and bring your best self to everything that you do. So that's what that means, and it's really, and it requires, and I've learned this these concepts recently. There's internal and external self-awareness that you have to have. And I think that's how I was able to find my way as a leader, where not only are you listening to your own voice, but you're seeing how it's, whether you're connecting with other people and how they're perceiving you. So BYBS is really a combination of your internal and external self-awareness, and being the best at whatever you're doing that you can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to what you said earlier about, you're earlier in your career, as a leader, you saw that you were all tasks, not as much on a relationship, and then you were able to kind of see that and see the other leaders doing things differently, and then you incorporated that, as well as the follow-up aspect. Those three things you mentioned, I think, heavily correlate to those of us who are also in talent acquisition, because if you're just all about the task, which is the job or rec you have in front of you, and you're not trying to find out what's important to them, not the relationship, then you're going to lose people. But then if you're all relationship, you're never going to fill the recs. And then the follow-up thing, that is like one of the number one things that, and I hear back that a lot of leaders as well as candidates are a lot of times put off by, is the lack of follow-up. So I'd say those three things you mentioned, I think, are key in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, and it's so fundamental, isn't it? It's very interesting how it could stand the test of time. No matter what age you're in, that's the way to approach the people that you lead. Anything outside of that, you're either a buddy or you're a manager. So for you to be a leader, you do need to combine all those three things. And once I figured that out, that's when I started to see success as a leader, where people really surprisingly liked me as a leader. And so it's not just about them listening to you and when you ask them to do something or following your direction, it's them wanting to follow you and learn about you, and would even care to take the time to ask you questions about you. That's when you've broken through that next level of a relationship type of leading. That, it's kind of like doing what we would want, right? If we were, if the shoe was on the other foot, what I would want from someone that leads me. So that's where the golden rule comes into play.
Yes, absolutely. So I like that. So BYBS, bring your best self. Now, what about VUCA? Can you define what the VUCA is?
So VUCA, which is VUCA, and VUCA is a concept that was coined by students at an Army War College, and it was after the Cold War, and it's interesting concept where there are actually some programs designed to help with where people get certificates on how to lead through VUCA. So VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And it was coined to describe the landscape for the environment that you're practicing in or you find yourself in. But I'm seeing that it's being applied a lot to healthcare, understandably, right? Because there's so many complexities, there's so much uncertainty, there's so much volatility, there's so much ambiguity. And it's, all those things apply, and it's happening it's accelerating actually even more lately.
Absolutely. So, what are some ways you can gauge the VUCA when you're looking at a certain situation? Are there any steps you take or any process you have in identifying what is the VUCA level on a certain opportunity or task or project?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you um, first you apply it to and accept it to the environment that you're working in, and it's not a bad thing to accept it. It doesn't mean that you're being negative about the environment that you're working in. It's more preparation where you're expecting that when I walk in the door, right, the day that I planned in my head is not the day that I'm going to have. It's also recognizing that because of the volatility, it requires some nimbleness, with an agility around how you make decisions and the timing of those decisions. So it could happen in a micro way and in a macro way. But I think as healthcare leaders, I think the best thing to do for us to be prepared, which is part of which will help you bring your best self, is to expect these dynamics in the environment that you work in, acknowledge them, and have a system and a process in place to manage through those issues. You can have a VUCA happening at the staff level, right? It could be a small situation between two people that work with you, or it could be in a larger sense where a CEO change may happen, right? And all of a sudden there's this chaos. So I think understanding that dynamic is in place and it's not negative, it's just accepting what is, I think will brace you to prepare for and manage yourself through these environments, which is why resiliency comes into play, right? And part of the continuum, we talked about the continuum for the type of leader you want to be. There's a continuum also for how you manage through VUCA and chaos. And the three things to be mindful of is on that continuum is there's vulnerability, there's resilience, and then there's unflappability. And depending on the situation, depending on the day, you move back and forth in that continuum. None of them are bad. It's just a description of where you are to manage through chaos.
So, how would you describe the differences between resiliency and unflappability? Because they seem somewhat very close to me.
They do. Well, let me start with vulnerability, if you don't mind, because I'll just walk
Okay, go
through
ahead.
the
Yeah,
different.
sure.
So with vulnerability is really, a state of being exposed, right? They're the elements, the VUCA elements, and you're exposed to them. And when you're exposed to them, it's a reaction to it, where it could cause some level of harm, right? Either physical or psychological.
Right.
And in that, it comes with not allowing yourself to feel and not having to hide how you feel in front of the people that you lead. I think the phrase that I'll use to help coin that is letting your slip. And forgive me, this, and I'm a woman, so I can say this, but letting your slip show a little bit.
Okay.
And there's some courage in that that we should have. Resiliency is the capacity to recover quickly. Once something happens to you, how you recover from it, how you recoil. It's that elasticity that we all try to develop when, you're hit. How long are you going to stay balled up in the corner? When are you going to get up and keep moving forward? Unflappability, though, this is where unflappability is different. Unflappability is showing calmness in the storm. It's also being emotionally and not changing who you are, because I think with resilience it's more of that hard shell, right? It's like you get hit, I get back up. I don't want you to see that you hurt me. Where unflappability is that smile stays on your face while you're batting these issues away because you know they're coming. There's actually a meme that is very popular, is viral, with Shaquille O'Neal, where he's like walking and joking and laughing, and there are these words coming at him, and he's batting them away. I don't know if you've seen that, Rollis,
Oh, I think I
but
have
it's
seen
that's
that. Yeah.
yeah, that's what inflammability is. It's coming. You're not, and if you notice in that meme, he's not even looking in the direction that these things are coming. He feels them coming and he's batting them away, right? That's what
Yeah.
inflammability is. I know these things are coming, but I'm going to keep this smile on my face. I'm going to keep walking and I'm batting these things away. I'm moving forward. So that's the difference between the three. Again, none of them are bad. It's a continuum that we tend to find ourselves in. When you don't expect, when something comes in your direction that you don't expect, it's very likely that you'll be vulnerable. If something comes from someone that you care about that you didn't expect will treat you poorly, and you don't want to show, for example, a lot of us don't want to show emotion in front of our bosses, i.e., the CEO, right? That's where you show resiliency. You're also not going to show emotion in front of a patient if you're a nurse. That's resiliency. And flappability is that stroll and strut and swagger that a leader should have to work through these issues, knowing that they're coming. So that's the swagger, and that's the difference between all three. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
And, when you said it does, when you said that about Shaquille O'Neal, that meme, you reminded me also. There was something shared recently I saw online about Kobe Bryant, and there was a guy who had the basketball in his hand, and he pushed the basketball right in Kobe's face, and it got like,
Mm.
I'm gonna say, like about that close to his face. And he didn't even flinch; he just
Mm-hmm.
stood there. It kind
Yep.
of goes back to that unflappability. You got stuff coming at you, and you're not even showing a response to it.
You got it. You got it. That's exactly it. And it doesn't mean that you it doesn't mean that you don't have a to do. But I think it's staying within yourself while you're working through these issues as they come your way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what would you say is your North Star? What's your guiding influence?
So my North Star really is, um, which I actually, and I've developed, it changes as I mature, not just as a professional, but also as an adult. And I saw a quote from Zig Ziglar where it that I learned about, where it is about how um, what you want in yourself for yourself, you get as long as you give the same to others. Something
Mm,
along those lines. I'm not doing it justice,
yeah,
and I
I think I
think
remember that.
it. Yeah, actually, I think I have it written here somewhere. It is, you get everything you want in life if you will
Hmm.
just help enough people to get them what they want. So
Yeah,
I
I remember.
think that servitude is the space that I'm in right now. Where I want to leave the world a better place than it was when I entered into it. I feel a responsibility to help people, to lift people, and support them as much as I can, and forget about me for a little bit, and just really delve into helping others.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, what would you say? How would you describe your mantra? What you live by and what you work by?
Well, your mantra, and I know it's not going to help because when I just gave you a bunch of words, but are you talking about the general principle of developing your mantra?
Hmm. Or what is first?
Yeah.
What is yours? And then maybe you can give some tips on, if someone doesn't have theirs formulated yet. What are some things you would suggest in formulating? But what is yours personally?
Yeah, well, mine is to always be myself while I'm supporting others. Um, I make a point to, and mind you, we all have a corporate stage persona and a home persona and a kitchen persona, depending on where you are, and the persona you have with a group of your relatives, right? But the general core of who Katie is does not change. I stay true to myself. I make a point to not change my thinking a lot on things, because especially when it comes to decision making, because I don't have the best memory. So I don't want to say one thing here and the next I say something else, and then someone confronts and I say, then you're caught, right? And integrity is very, very important to me too. So I stay true to who I am, but also being there for others is kind of my mantra. Now they do say your mantra should be something that's short enough that could be printed on a T-shirt. So I'm getting there, and I'm working on that.
That's hard. That's difficult, but I think it's worth it's worth it. How would you describe, now a lot of people attribute this to Kobe Bryant, this Mamba mentality, but it extends beyond him. Explain what that means.
So it's something that I'm actually recently researching, because I'm very intrigued by it. My son is a big Kobe fan. He actually named his dog after him. I'll admit, when I used to be a fan of the Lakers, but I was on the Shaq side versus Kobe. So I was not a major Kobe fan, but I am learning a lot about him and his philosophy in life. And I'm very intrigued by him for a man who never went to college, that played basketball almost most of his life, listening to a lot of what he left behind, his writings, his musings, his interviews, has been very enlightening and impressive. Where I pray that I have that level of maturity and insight sometime before I die, right? So from what I understand, the Mamba mentality really is about key things you need to do, and it's about really working hard to. And I'm trying to find the notes that I wrote on this, because I've been researching this lately. It's about growth, which is a process. It's about development, which entails hard work. It's about timing, when you peak, when it matters most. And all of us that watched him play, he knew when to raise his game, right? He would already be at a high level, and he's playing at an even higher level at playoffs, or when the chips are down. And he always had this second level of an on switch, that I tend to have happen to me when my back is up against the wall. Let's say I'm in the hospital and there's a Joint Commission visit, a regulatory visit. I get into a different mode that I didn't know I had. And then last thing is that competitive spirit. And we tend to look at that, particularly in our setting, as a negative term, but it's not. It's really about positioning yourself, and putting yourself deliberately in opposition to whatever else is around you, and not just your peers. It's also people in the market that you have to compete with. So positioning is also key. So those are the things that I've learned from Mama mentality that could be applied to our setting in healthcare, which is very, very fascinating. And the last piece, you put all that together, it's also being laser focused in that goal. And there's a clip of Kobe waiting, and you've probably seen his role, it's where he was waiting on the sideline. And I think he was going in, he's waiting to go in when, during a timeout or what have you. And Chris Rock was 2 seats away from him, cracking jokes, and everyone around Chris Rock was laughing, and he was directing those jokes at Kobe. And Kobe had this iron face. He would not even crack a smile. And Chris Rock was working hard, and he's funny. So that's that laser focus that
Yeah.
he had in achieving his goals that we all should try to get with certain things that we're trying to pursue as professionals.
Yeah. And so, like I've heard Kobe say this in interviews that, even though they call him the mom or whatever, he says that this extends beyond him, and you really hit the nail on the
Mm-hmm.
head. It's those characteristics that you follow. Anyone can follow in any industry, any walk of life. You can have that same mentality to be successful. It was something he saw that fit him and what he wanted to do, and he was great at it. I've seen recently some interviews, some of his teammates. They were just in awe of his work ethic, the level of
Yeah.
effort he would put into practice, that the game was just like, it was just another thing. I mean, it was an extension of what he was already doing in practice. In fact, someone said that they wish they had tape of him in practice because it was way better than what you actually saw in the game. I mean, it was like unbelievable, even though he did great things in the game. So it goes
Yeah.
back to, what do you do when you're not seen by the masses? What are you doing behind the scenes? The work ethic that you talked about earlier, I think, does definitely play into that. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
and the
appreciate you.
preparation that it requires, right? That is a part of it. And the other thing about him was that he was very well rounded. He took the effort to learn things that didn't come naturally to him. He relied on experts to help give him knowledge on things that he did not know. He called J.K. Rowling's, right? He called a lot of the key people outside of his industry and area of expertise to learn, and that humility is important, um, not just for leaders, but any human being, right? To heed, to seek experts and learn more, and be thirsty. Um, I think is a quality that anyone can have, no matter what age you are.
Yeah, I see Andrea Henderson. She says laser focus on your goals is key. There are so many distractions that can take you off task. Mama mentality. Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
Let me ask you
it's great.
this. What would you tell your 15-year-old self, knowing what you know now? What advice would you give her?
Ooh, that's a good one. So I think I'm going to say to my 15-year-old self is it's okay to make mistakes. I put a lot of pressure on myself as a kid, and I think that's why I burnt out after high school because as you come up as kids, someone's going to put a label on you, right? And the label that I got was um, I had the smarts. I was one of the smarter kids in our lineage or what have you. So I was full throttle. I didn't give myself a break. I constantly was studying, reading, what have you. And that label put so much pressure on me. I think what I would say to myself would be reject the label and make your mistakes, recover, and keep moving. Because, and I think this is a typical thinking of a 15-year-old where sometimes it could be a little thing and you think the world is going to end and you can't, whenever there's something that involves shame, you can't face anyone and you want to stay in your room. Those are the things that I would tell myself is that, success comes with failure. Those two go hand in hand, and I didn't allow myself to fail. I felt that I had to succeed at everything.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. And failing at something there's actually a positive in that because you're able to not only make adjustments and maybe do better at that, but you also might find something you really don't have a passion in. Maybe you shouldn't even be doing that. You should be
Yeah,
doing something else, altogether. So let me ask you this: since
exactly.
you mentioned Kobe, he learned a lot. I know some of the things I mentioned. I saw her earlier with him, not earlier, but just recently. He was fluent in Italian. I also saw him play a
Hmm.
great piece on the piano. So, like you said, he was
Hmm.
multifaceted. I want to ask you a question. If there's any skill that you could learn, what skill would that be?
Oh, easy, drums. I want to play drums. I want to play drums so bad. I and I will find room to learn how to do that. But that is something that I would love to learn how to do. As a matter of fact, in our church, there's a lady that played drums there. Now she directs a choir, but she pinch hits whenever there's someone that's not going to be there. And she has on these 4-inch heels playing drums, and she has a haircut like mine, and I think she's the coolest. And every time I go there, and what I'm pushing 50 now, I just want to be that. Like I want to play the drums.
Do you think that will that I love that. So do you think that is something that's important for healthcare professionals like yourself to pursue passions outside of healthcare and learning new skills? How important do you think that is?
Oh yeah, I think it's definitely necessary. I think again, there's a value in us being well-rounded, and part of BIBS or being BYBS is also embracing things outside of your profession. I always share this story. I'm not defined by what I do. I'm defined by who I am. I start with the fact that I'm a mom, I'm a wife, right? What I do comes third or fourth, right? I'm Aisha's daughter. I go through those things. So when you do struggle, and you will, when you do struggle as a leader, it's not such a shot to your psyche, because at the end of the day, you're someone's awesome mom. And at some point, I'll be able to say at the end of the day, even if this engagement that I have as a leader doesn't work, I'm a great drummer. I can beat the heck out of these drums. So I plan to add that on the list higher than what I do as a leader. And we all need that. So absolutely, we all need a passion that has nothing to do with how we get paid.
Now, we talked about earlier what helped you to form becoming a leader and a good leader. Um, there are those that are just trying to get their first gig. They're trying to get their first deal, first job as a leader. And I'm getting this all the time, and they're finding struggles. What are some action items you think you would suggest for them to take to get to the point of being that leader within healthcare? What are some key milestones or markers they should be looking to get to?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll tell you, Raleigh, I get those questions in my LinkedIn page all the time through private messages with people that find me. And this is what I usually say. The first step is you need to be academically prepared, right? You need to get those degrees, get those certifications. And I think that's part of the positioning. You need that learning formally to prepare yourself to be a good leader. The second thing is be open. And I say be open to, when I say that, I mean when projects come your way, when extra assignments come your way, people are looking at that and how you're going to respond to when extra work comes your way, right? And that's part of the test that you get in the environment that you're working in. So when those things come your way, gladly take them on and embrace them and give it everything that you have. That's the test. That's the interview that's happening when you're not really interviewing. The third is to be seen. And when I say be seen, and you mentioned being seen earlier, is know who the key people are in the organization and make sure they know your name. Introduce yourself to them. And that's part as well. Introduce yourself to them, strike conversations with them, get to know them. Like, do you have a dog? I have a dog. Those types of things. And when the time is right, you're not gonna run into a CEO in the hallway and say, "Hey, Mr. Smith, do you have a dog?" You want to look for the right time to have those discussions, but you want to make sure the CEO and the key people that make those types of decisions in your organization know who you are.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't remember who said this, but it's not who you know, it's who knows you that counts. And I think you hit on that
Absolutely.
head. It's one thing for you to know them, but if they know you, it's a different story. Let me ask you
That
this: if you were to
absolutely.
live on a, if you were to, I'm going to paint a scenario for you. If you were to live on a space station and you had to go there for 3 months and you were allowed to only bring 3 items with you, what three
Ooh.
items would those?
Well, all right. So it depends. Is there Wi-Fi on that? Because the
Okay,
first
I'll
thing
give
I'll
you
say
that.
is my.
I'll give you that. Let's say there's a Wi-Fi. Let's go ahead and pretend there's a Wi-Fi. Go ahead.
All right, all right. So definitely my iPad.
Okay.
Second would be my Bible. Um, third, and this is things, not people, right?
Mhm. Yes. Things.
Okay. Bible, iPad, even though I can read my Bible on my iPad. But I'll do those two. Third thing, and I'll say this because it seems to always work on those survival shows, is a knife.
Oh, the knife. Okay, got it. Well, it's
You
interesting
never
that
know.
you
You
said,
always could use a knife.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting that you separated the Bible from the iPad because that, to me, that also expresses your connection with the physical book versus just being on your iPad. Because obviously, you could have hundreds of translations on your iPad, but you can only have one translation at a time of the Bible. So I think that it kind of goes to show that people have connection still with physical books in addition to
Absolutely,
devices.
absolutely. Yep, I take my physical Bible to church. I don't, and I have my phone, and I could definitely refer to my app on my phone, but I have to have my Bible in my hand. There's energy that I draw from the actual book. Call
That's
me old
interesting you
school.
mentioned that. Yeah, that's hey, it's totally fine. A lot of people are like that. I saw a thing not too long ago with Bill Gates. He has this little retreat he takes, I think it's like once a year, and he goes by himself for like a week, and he just takes stacks of books with him. And
Mm,
he's a tech guy, but he's taking all these
hmm.
stacks of books with him to read during that retreat. Okay, I got another
Yeah,
question for you. Would you rather have the ability to change the past or see your future?
change the past.
Why is that?
Definitely change the past. Because I don't like predictability. I don't want to know my future. I think there's some level of excitement and anticipation that drives me. So I don't want to. As a matter of fact, I have one of my I have a family member who loves fortune tellers and that type of stuff. You will never catch me in those places. I don't want to know what are in the cards for me. I thrive on the suspense. I really do. Now, in terms of changing the past, I don't know how much I would change because that's what made me who I am. Maybe some of the more painful things I'll tweak a little bit so it wouldn't hurt so much. But and the pain and hopefully that adjust it so the pain wouldn't last that long. But I definitely would change the past rather than adjust the future for sure.
Okay. All right. So here's what we're going to do now. We're going to finish up with what I call this or that. And I'm just going to get an idea of your preferences on a few things. Are you ready? You ready for that?
Sure. Shoot.
Okay. I don't want you to think much at all about this. I want you to just fire away without giving it much thought at all.
Okay.
What do I
I'm
have over here?
nervous.
No, it's going to be easy. It's all about preferences. Okay.
Okay.
So number one, would you
Mm-hmm.
rather watch a video or read an article?
Read an article.
Instagram or Facebook?
Instagram.
LinkedIn or Twitter?
LinkedIn.
Call or text?
Text.
WhatsApp or DM?
WhatsApp.
Email or iMessage?
Email.
Phone or tablet?
Ooh, tablet.
Netflix or Amazon Prime?
That's hard. I'm getting into Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime. I'm very much into that.
Okay. Go to a movie theater or stream it?
Movie theater.
Indeed or Glassdoor?
Glassdoor.
Watch or play sports?
Watch.
Mac or PC?
Mac.
Android or Apple?
Oh, definitely Apple.
Driving or self-driving cars?
Driving. I'm not there yet.
Okay, how about renting a car or taking an Uber or a Lyft?
Oh, definitely Lyft.
Okay,
Definitely.
all right. Hulu or Disney Plus?
You know, my kids are grown, so we're past the Disney Plus, so I'll say Hulu.
Okay. Breakfast or dinner?
Breakfast.
Facebook or Snapchat?
I'll say Facebook because I'm not on for Snapchat.
YouTube or cable TV?
Cable TV.
Last one, phone or computer?
Phone.
All right. Hey, thanks for playing.
Yeah, so what does it say about me?
There's
no
definition. There's no definitions. It's interesting when you have these quick choices you have to make between the two, but most people can make them pretty quickly based on those two choices.
I think you've exposed me to being pretty old school but forward thinking.
Yeah, I think you definitely have characteristics of both, right? Which is similar to me. You're kind of hybrid, which is kind of cool. I like it. I've interviewed some that were way on one side and way on the other side too. So
yeah, well, it works because I'm a Gemini, so it makes sense, right?
Okay, well, I know nothing about the sign, so yeah.
The twins,
probably.
2 people.
Okay, so listen, this has been awesome, Katie. We're gonna have to have you back on the show. We're gonna get next time. We're gonna tackle another issue or two. There were other things on the list we didn't have time to discuss, but definitely thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate you being here. Now, how should someone reach out to you? What's the best way to reach out to you if they wanted to contact you further?
So the best way to reach out to me is LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, Katie Boston-Leary. That's one way. A second way would be I can read my email off, katie.leary@r1initiative.com. So those are the two ways to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. Thanks for being on the show. Appreciate what you're doing. Keep up the great work, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. And you keep going with this too. This is amazing. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. It's a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right. Rest of you take care. Feel free and put comments in if you have questions.